Hi, welcome to another episode of the Jackpot Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Victor. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Um, on this podcast, like you already know, we talk about the lived experiences of Nigerians in the diaspora. And as always, I have a wonderful guest who is going to share his experience with us. I'm going to call him to introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Ikenna Okeh. I'm a writer. And, yeah, I identify as a Nigerian writer, and I live in a number of places anyway. So it's good to be a part of this podcast where I get to share my experiences as a writer and of course a traveler. A Nigerian living in diaspora. So yeah, thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you very much, Ikenna, for joining. I think Ikenna and I have known each other for nearly 10 years. Not like we've been in contact, in constant communication, but at least it's about 10 years now since we knew each other. And ever since, you've grown in your craft, and I've been cheering from the sideline, obviously. And I just wanted to
Clearly,
say thumbs up.
thank you.
All right, so before we go, this is always my first question. I always want to know how the journey abroad starts. And in your case, I think you were in Cyprus first before you went to Turkey. So I'm just going to
True.
ask you, how did your journey to Cyprus start? And at what point did you move from Cyprus to Turkey?
Okay. I went to Cyprus in 2018, March 2018, and
Yeah.
I went on a student visa. Okay. So my experience in Cyprus, even though it was an eye opener, it was a bad experience, and it's something I like. It pains me seeing people take that route, like going to Cyprus. And when it comes to Cyprus, people get to, you know, generally when it comes to living Nigeria, everybody wants to believe that anywhere outside of Nigeria is better than Nigeria. But
True.
yeah,
Unfortunately,
of
yeah,
course,
people believe that.
yeah, yeah, of course, I've always known Cyprus not to be the ideal travel destination for a Nigerian migrant or any African migrant for that matter. But I still somehow believe that I could make things work for myself because, apart from being a writer, I published some books by then, and I also work with a music promotion platform, a virtual music promotion platform. So
Yeah.
I believed I could do something for myself while in Cyprus. And but on getting to Cyprus, I realized that the cost of living is just unbelievable. I mean, you're expected to pay up to £200 in rent every month. And, in fact, everything was just too expensive. And it's a bad experience for almost everybody I know in Cyprus. So, yeah, and Cyprus is not. And actually, I wrote a novel from my
Okay.
experiences in Cyprus. I titled it Deportee. It's about a young Nigerian who traveled to Cyprus, lived there for like 2 years, and he got the same difficulties that myself and many other people in Cyprus experienced, and he was eventually deported. So basically, what I wanted to achieve with that book is that I wanted to not only, okay, I wanted on one part to educate people on what one was to expect in places like Cyprus. And of course, there are still many places in the
Yeah.
world like Cyprus. Yeah, that's what I wanted to achieve on one part. And on the other part, I wanted Nigerians to understand how it feels to be a deportee. Like, because I understand that whenever you see somebody deported from Europe or someplace else back
Yeah.
to Nigeria, there's a way we perceive the person as failure, as somebody who is a never doer, somebody who didn't make it like many others. So with that book,
Yeah.
I wanted people to understand the psychology of a deportee, and because I believe literature is all about, it's all about getting to understand the human condition.
Yeah.
So we can be better humans if we can be better humans for ourselves and for the human community in general if we're able to understand the human the human condition. So I
Yeah,
wanted
true.
to do that. I wanted to do that for do I call it negative migration? Because normally when you talk about migration in Africa, you're talking about people moving from Africa to the West, right? Now,
Yeah.
but in this case, and of course, a lot of people do say that this is the first book that they're reading of an African being forcefully moved from the West back to Africa. Yeah,
Yeah.
so and I think so far I've been able to achieve that to a considerable extent.
All right. So I think I like the fact that you mentioned being the Deportee novel. I've not read it actually. I know I've made a
I recommend
mental
it.
note. I'm going to try to read it. So
I
because
recommend it.
yeah, I'll try and check it out. So there's something you mentioned first, how Cyprus is not ideal for an African migrant. I think people are beginning to get more aware of that. Initially, it wasn't as common knowledge as it is now. Again, I might be also be biased based on the contact I have because sometimes you think everybody knows things just because you know it. But there might still be people who don't know. But the interesting thing is, it kind of leads to why this podcast exists because I had wanted to move to Switzerland and one of my brothers liked the idea because, of course, Switzerland has a very good PR. Everybody thinks Switzerland is one of the best places in the world to live. But my brother was like, he has also not heard anybody who lived in Switzerland, and he recounted how one of his friends had gone to Cyprus years ago, and then it turned out to be a terrible experience. So it was like, at least he has known someone who moved out of the country and it was a bad experience. He wouldn't want me to have that experience. And I remember one of the things I tried to do to be able to convince him, or not like it was his decision to make it completely, but when people who care about you show signs, you want to prove that you're also making a good decision. I remember trying to look around on the internet, where can I find people's personal stories, and I didn't see anything. And that's what actually clips on my mind that we actually should be documenting these things. And years later, eventually the podcast happened. So I wish more people are aware about the whole Cyprus thing. I don't understand why I mean, you mentioned the cost of living, but I don't think it's just a cost of living. I wouldn't know because I think cost of living is high in almost every European country. But for somehow, when people go to Cyprus, there's always a problem. And I wish we have more conversation about that. And then you also said something about the deportation story, and it leads me back to something that happened again. While I was in university, I worked in my university radio station briefly, and I interviewed someone who had traveled out of the country through the desert. And it's always a very tough journey. And it took about
Yeah.
1 year thereabout before he moved from Nigeria to it was in Spain. The country borders Morocco, so it has to be Spain, right? So he moved from Nigeria to Spain within the space of 1 year. And of course, there were different stops in different countries in Africa. And at some point, he was going to return home. But each time he spoke to his parents, it was like a reminder that if you come back home when you're supposedly traveled abroad with nothing to show for it, that you're a failure. And that was what actually kept on pushing this guy because he basically saw that the journey he was prepared for was not what he was seeing and wanted to come back home, but they wouldn't let him because it's like you failed. We've spent money. You've done this. If you come back home, people are going to ask questions. People are going to wonder if you speak Igbo, Nkegadiche, those kind of things.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it was very sad listening to him talk about this because eventually he lose one of his toes in this journey. He lost all the people he had met as friends in this journey. So imagine going through that horrific journey, building friendship, and these people dying off because of mishaps that are on the way. And eventually you get there unconscious and they still send you back home after over 1 year on the journey. And just like what you reflected on, it's like once for any reason anybody leaves Nigeria and travels abroad and comes back home, it's like they have failed. They've done something that nobody should ever do. It's something we have to question eventually, but I still it's really sad because like in the story I mentioned, this would have been a shorter trip for him, but he wasted actually 1 year being completely traumatized by the time he comes back, losing some part of his body and with all the wounds and all the permanent scars he has to keep, which could have been avoided. But let's not dwell so much into all of this. So, at what point did you decide, okay, Cyprus was no longer working, I have to leave Cyprus?
Okay, it was not. I was deported from Cyprus actually.
Okay.
Yes, because
So, sorry,
I
sorry to cut you. So, basically, the Deportee story is a true life story.
well, I fictionalized the true life story. I mean,
Okay.
anybody who has been to Cyprus would somehow identify themselves in the book. So it's not exactly
Okay.
my story per se. It's more or less everybody's story. So I mean, whoever has been to Cyprus must one way or another see themselves in the pages of that book. And yes, I was deported from Cyprus because at the point I couldn't renew my residence permit because it was tight because I didn't go to school for one semester. I had to raise
Yeah.
money. Okay. So in the course of that, I went to the market. I went to the market one day to buy food to eat one night. And on the way back, I was stopped by the police. They asked for my residence permit. I explained to them that, listen, I didn't go to school throughout the semester, and my residence permit is not valid. And they locked me up. They took me to court. Yeah, and they refused to give me a lawyer. So I had to defend myself in court. And I told them that, listen, I've committed no crimes. I came here legally on a student visa. I went to school. I have my transcripts to show for that. But since you're keeping me in an underground cell
Yeah.
as though I were a criminal, I want to be deported. So I asked to be deported because I felt that
Okay.
I was unfairly treated. I mean, why should they
Yeah.
keep me in the same place as murderers, as criminals? So I asked to be deported, and they kept me there for a total of 14 days. After which, one early morning, they knocked on my cell and they told me that I was to be deported straight to Nigeria, and that was it. So
Wow.
before it got to that point, I knew that wow, I've made one hell of a mistake to
A
come to
bad
Cyprus.
decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I realized that I've made a bad decision because I mean, apart from the fact that Cyprus is even racist. I mean, there are so many stranded Africans, not just Nigerians, even Zimbabweans as well. Like you practically see every African country represented there. Like and these are always young people who came simply to study. But at
Yeah.
some point, and you know one thing with Africans, we believe that we will come to a place to study, maybe after paying the first semester school fees. You
Instrumental
could,
payment. Yeah. For
yeah,
fees.
you could be able to find work and all of that. But now, when you work in, mind you, I'm talking about Northern Cyprus. Please, let's not mistake it. There is Northern Cyprus and
Okay.
Southern Cyprus. So please, where I'm talking about Northern Cyprus.
Okay.
So in Northern Cyprus, when you work, they pay you in Turkish lira, but you're
Okay.
expected to pay your house rent in pounds, and you pay your school fees in euros, right?
So when you convert, the money you earn doesn't amount to much.
Sometimes it doesn't even cover your rent.
Whoa.
Yeah, not to talk of feeding and then your school fees. So it turned out impractical to live in Cyprus. Like it was
Yeah.
impractical. And the thing is this, that you're expected to leave as soon as you're done with your studies. You're expected to
So they don't
leave.
have plans to retain the people who have come to study in their country.
No, I mean, if there are such plans, I think there were a few of them who were able to do, I think, I think they were doing a PhD or so, and then they were working in some universities, and I don't know
Yeah.
how they manage that, but the percentage is insignificant. It doesn't even
Okay.
feature in the grand scheme of things. No, it doesn't feature at all. So, I mean, long before that happened, I knew that I made a mistake. And another thing is this. I think there are only two embassies in Northern Cyprus, or three embassies. I think there is the German embassy, there is the US embassy, and then there's the British embassy. And Northern Cyprus is controlled by Turkey, mind you. So
Okay.
it is not recognized by the United Nations or any other country for that matter, except Turkey. So if you were to come to Northern Cyprus and you expect to leave, maybe at some point, legally, you decide to move on, your chances are limited because if you want
There
to
are
go
no
to
embassies for you to apply for visas.
exactly. Now, for you to be
Whoa.
able to achieve that, you would have to go to Turkey first. You have to seek for a visa, a visa to go to Turkey, so as to be able to access your embassies or as some other
So,
embassies
sorry, I
there.
have to cut you short again because you just said Northern Cyprus is controlled by Turkey, but somehow if you also
Yes,
want to go to Turkey, you still need a visa.
exactly. Yes,
Migration politics is such a thing, and half the time I don't understand it. I mean, generally, I think visa process is a humiliating
it is. It
experience
is.
because
I agree.
practically it's you saying, please, I'm coming to your country, I'll be a good person, don't disgrace me.
Yes, that's what it is.
And and then how can you, because you manage a country, but somehow people in that country cannot visit your country. But of course, I imagine that people in Turkey can easily visit Northern Cyprus if they want to.
Yes, it's just a walk in the park. It's very easy.
Interesting. Whoa. So, sorry I cut you short, but so let's talk about again. Now, when you realize you're getting deported, what did you feel at that point? And how were you able to? I mean, of course, I imagine you feel distraught, heartbroken, but whatever you felt at that point, how were you able to um, convince yourself that, well, this has happened and truly I have to move on?
Okay. Remember, I told you that while in court, I asked to
Yeah,
be deported,
you asked
right?
for it, yes.
Yes, and because I knew that that was exactly what was going to happen, so there was no point trying to humiliate myself.
Yeah,
So I needed to stand tall. And the thing, so before that happened, I told myself that okay, this is going to be the outcome of this whole thing, right? And I'm not going to buckle. Like I just told myself that okay, it's a good thing going back home. And even though I was going with nothing, I mean, I had no savings, I had nothing,
yeah,
right? But the good thing was that I mean, I left Nigeria in 2018.
18, yeah,
I'd already started writing from 2014. I'd already
yeah,
started making some waves, as a writer, as at 2014, 2015. Okay, so
yeah,
I already understood what it means to put value to yourself and to add value to your community. I understood
yeah,
that clearly. So I had no problems convincing myself that something good will come out of the whole, something good will come out of this whole experience. And being the writer that I am, everything that I see, everything that I encounter is fodder for creativity.
yeah, true.
Okay, so I told myself that I would see things that way, and that was it.
And then when you got home, what was I mean, of course, maybe I'm sure you called your parents before you got home or your family. What was the reaction when they learned about it and then when it eventually happened and you're back home to Nigeria?
Okay, when I was locked up, my greatest
Yeah,
concern then was to talk to my father. So I was able to
okay.
convince one of the guards to give me his
Let you
phone
talk
and
to him.
so that
Yeah,
I'll talk to my father. So I eventually got across to my it wasn't easy, but I eventually got across to my father and I told him something. I told him that listen, I know you must have heard of this you must have heard of my current situation. Do not panic. Do not give anybody any money to try to that I don't want this thing
get you
resolved
out.
here.
Yeah,
That I want to get home. That he shouldn't worry. That when next I'll call him, I will let him know that I'm in Nigeria. That he should not panic. And he should not lift a finger to in fact he should never intervene in whatever was going to happen. So I told him that was the
okay.
instructions I gave, and they all said, okay, no problem. So a week later or thereabouts, I called from Abuja. That was in Nigeria. So and of course when I got home,
Wow.
yes, when I got home, the thing is that my parents were very understanding. They tried to make my dad especially try to make sure that I covered up the whole thing. Like he doesn't want me to tell people that I was deported. He was like, listen, don't tell anybody that and all of that.
Yeah,
If it is money, this is money. He he actually gave me the keys to his car. That wherever it is you want to, just make everybody believe that you just came back. But I
Yeah.
told him that no, that this is not what I'm going to do. That I was never going to do that. So that, like, I practically, in fact, I turned down his offers, and I told myself that I was coming to Nigeria to enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had missed I'd missed Nigerian food. I'd missed a lot of things that I was used to, and I was looking forward to these things. And
Yeah.
this was during Christmas.
Okay, perfect time to be back to
You
Nigeria.
understand? So I told myself that the secret government just pays for my flight back home to enjoy Christmas. That's how I saw it. So
Okay, I mean,
I
that's a very nice perspective to look
yeah,
at it from.
that was how I saw it. So I was enjoying myself, and I mean, I for the 2 years I spent in Cyprus, I didn't even have sex. Yes.
That
So
was
this was one of the things I was looking forward to. I'm going back to Nigeria where that's not going to be a problem for me. You understand?
something
So
about that, Sha.
exactly. Imagine what a person will go for 2 years, stay less. What
Yeah.
is now? It don't make sense now. So yeah, I enjoyed myself in Nigeria. But then, I mean, the people who really gave me shit were my cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, my cousins actually, because
Extended family members
yeah,
always
extended
bringing the
family members.
problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were the ones who gave me shit. You know.
But why did
So
it
and
matter to them, though?
what exactly was I going to tell them? Because I told
I
them that
mean,
listen, I
what?
was
I mean, I'm sorry. I said, why did it matter to them? What
okay,
was their
okay, okay.
problem exactly? Yeah.
The thing is that you would never understand certain things until situations, in fact, things happen.
Yeah.
Until things happen, that's when you understand, the true spirit of the people around you.
True.
So if someone were to tell me that this will be it, I would have doubted it. Because even while I was in Cyprus, I was in good terms with most of
Most
them.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I came back home and they came close and they realized that, okay, this guy actually doesn't have money.
Yeah.
And they themselves, they had money. So they began to make me feel,
Okay.
they attempted to make me feel less of myself. So they did all of that. And eventually, okay, after Christmas, I was about to
Yeah.
leave again. I started processing because when I came back, I had friends from all over. So some people were saying,
Yeah.
okay, Ikenna, do you want to come to Turkey? Do you want to come to Germany? Do you want to come? Like everybody wanted me to come over to their side.
Yeah.
And they were ready to send me the invitation letter and all of that. And some of them had contacts with embassies and all of that. So, but I had already called up one of my friends and I told him that, listen, I want to come to Turkey. Turkey is the place I want to come
Okay.
to. So please send me the invitation and everything that is necessary. So he said, okay, send me your passport data page. I sent it to him in 3 hours. In about 3 hours, he sent me his company documents. He sent me everything, invitation letter and all that. So, and another of my friends again, Onyeka, who is actually my cousin, my distant cousin, Onyeka Mwenwe, he had
Onyeka is
contacts.
your cousin.
Yes, it's my cousin.
I mean, I
It's
thought
my
you guys were just friends. I didn't know you were
no,
related by
no,
blood.
it's my distant cousin.
Okay.
We're from the same place, like we're from the same village.
Okay.
Yeah. So he sent me the contacts of the Turkish ambassador to Nigeria as at then. So I went there with copies of my books and all of that, and this went through my application and all that, and they gave me a visa. But I wasn't able to leave until after the lockdown. Until
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
when
So
the
that
lockdown
should be
was lifted,
middle
September,
of September
September,
2020.
yeah, September 2020. So I went to Turkey September 2020. So when I went to Turkey, those my cousins, they started feeling insecure because they were like, we thought this guy doesn't have money. How did he get the money? How did he get the money to travel? I know there is one thing about Nigerians. Nigerians believe that to travel you need to spend a whole lot of money. You need to spend money in millions.
Well, you actually need to spend money in millions, don't you?
Well, but as a creative, as a writer,
Yeah,
And
sometimes you get some
in
favors and
most
stuff
cases,
like that. Yeah.
it's always cheaper for me, yeah, because I don't need to go through any travel agents. I just pay my
Okay.
visa fee. I go with the documents the necessary documents and every document to convince them that listen, this is who I am. And actually
Yeah.
being a writer opens doors actually. I just have to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I should start writing a book.
It makes it if you write a book and it's able to get the attention of let me say a global audience or parts of
Yeah.
global audiences, it gives you an edge to travel because sometimes when they see how much you've contributed to uh
The cultural and art
cultural
scene.
awareness and all of that, it's
Yeah.
it's always an easy pass for you. I mean, the Turkish government they gave me a 1 year visa.
Okay.
Yeah, and I so that was exactly what happened, and I left Nigeria.
So, but was there a particular reason you chose Turkey? Because, I mean, considering the proximity to Cyprus, personally, I don't think I would have wanted to. So, was there a particular reason you
Right.
chose it? Is it because of the proximity? Is it because you feel like you're more familiar to their culture? Why exactly did you choose Turkey?
Okay, the thing is this: I have never been attracted. Okay, I have it at the back of my mind that
Yeah.
I'm first and foremost a writer,
Okay.
and I must never find myself in situations or in environments that would put me in a position where I have to grind, as into parents, as into get by.
Yeah.
There are there are many developed Western societies like that where you like in fact you end up serving the industrial complex that
Yeah.
you no longer have time for yourself, and your creativity. Where you have to work, let me say, two jobs, so as to be able
Yeah. To
to
be able to make ends meet.
make ends meet. I didn't want that, and at that point, my career was at that
Begin to
stage where
pick up.
I had to give it my all,
Yeah.
right? I had to give it my all. So I didn't want to go to some of these places that I was having people that were telling me, okay, come over, come. So Turkey I'd always known Turkey to be laid back.
Okay.
It's one of the cheapest countries to live in Europe.
Yeah.
The processes for getting a residence permit is very easy, pretty straightforward.
Okay.
You necessarily do not have to tie yourself to a woman to be able to get papers. In
Okay.
fact, you don't need to. You don't need to. So, and I needed a country that gives me all of this, close to Europe, so that
Yeah.
I can be promoting my books
You
and
can
all of
travel
that.
within Europe if you want to, yes.
Exactly. Not really travel. Of course, it's not part of the Schengen area. Yeah, you need a visa to the Schengen area. That is true. But then
Yeah.
it's cheaper to fly because
It gives you
Turkish airline.
proximity and yeah.
Yeah, all of that. So I calculated all of this and said, no, no, Turkey is the ideal place for me, and it's been the best decisions I've made so far in my life. It's been one
So
of
I'm
the
going
best
to ask
decisions
one
I've made.
thing now. For Turkey, because you said you don't want to be caught up in the web where you are working, 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 and not able to focus on your creativity. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, so how does one get by in Turkey? I understand you've said it's it's at a low cost of living, but even when there's a low cost of living, someone has to still make bread. So what kind of
True.
job does one get when they are in Turkey and maybe they don't speak the language? You don't speak the Turkish language, do you?
No, I don't. I don't. But I understand it. Although I could
Yeah,
speak a
so
little
what kind
bit
of job
that.
can one do when they get into Turkey to be able to maybe manage themselves and then maybe whatever other creative aspirations they have? Yeah.
Okay. The thing is, there's one thing about Turkey. Turkey is a
Okay.
business hub. Turkey is a business hub,
Okay.
right? So they are very much into manufacturing, and Nigerians like Turkish clothes,
Okay.
yeah, Turkish building materials, um, fixtures and all of that. So we have a lot of Nigerians who would want to come to Turkey to buy goods, but who are unable to come because of visa constraints and stuff like that. So
Okay.
you could work as a middleman between them and the manufacturers in Turkey, and you get your cuts. from it.
And that's enough for someone to have a roof under their head and pay put food on the table.
Of course. I mean, let me
Interesting.
give you an let me give you let me give you an instance. It's like something like in China, for
Okay.
instance. Although it does not work exactly like that in Turkey. In China, I mean, this is more or less an inside information I'm giving you. If you're
Yeah.
able to do that in China, your fee is $1,000. Like nobody argues that the company gives you $1,000 for that. Like that's in
So the
China, even
person,
not in
so
Turkey.
sorry to cut you
However,
short. The person paying you is a company, not the person in Nigeria.
the company pays you for bringing the customer.
That's a very interesting business model. If you would not tell me on
Yeah.
time, now maybe I should have gone to. Are you serious?
Yes. So
That's actually a
that's
very
that's how.
interesting business model.
Yeah, so we have a lot of people in Nigeria who want to buy Turkish doors because Turkish doors is a big deal in Nigeria,
Yeah.
and Turkish furniture is a big deal
Yeah.
in Nigeria. I mean, in Nigeria you could be getting it for 5 million naira, but in Turkey you could get it for 1 million naira or a little above 1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the difference is always much, and of course, the main thing is Turkish clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the demands for Turkish wares in Africa is always very high.
Yeah. There's a rise of it. There's an
Yeah,
increase in the demand in Nigeria. Yes.
it's always high. So, I mean, the whole like most of us have businesses in Nigeria. Like we have boutiques in Nigeria, so we'll buy stuff from Turkey and sell to boutiques in Nigeria. We display on in our own as well and all of that. So these are like you know Turkey offers you a way out of the 9 to 5 grind.
Okay.
Yeah, there are people who
Yeah.
actually work 9 to 5 in Turkey, right? There are people who actually work,
Yeah.
like there are other Africans who do that. But when it comes to places like Istanbul, like places in Istanbul, like um, Aksaray, Osman Bey, and all of that, you see a lot of
Yeah.
Nigerians there. Yeah, this is what they do. They are into trade, they're into commerce, and it gives more money than 9 to 5.
I mean, that's a very interesting person because one of the things I know I said I wanted to discuss with you is basically how you're able to manage living in Europe and still pursuing your creative endeavor because it's, I mean, we've heard stories. I mean, recently, I think Shola Shabawale, you know her, the actor, moved out of the country at some point in her career. And I think I heard her say in an interview that she had to do janitorial jobs to be able to cool. Joseph Benjamin said in an interview too, was it last year that he had to become a taxi driver, an Uber driver. Yes, that's a taxi, yes. So it's like when you hear things like this, you begin to wonder, and these are people, let's be honest. I know when Shola Shobowale left in I think mid 2000s, I think she has come to a place in her career that even if that she was popular. She was getting big roles at the time. When Joseph Benjamin left, he had hosted one of the biggest reality TV shows, big game shows in Nigeria, and he was acting. So these people were actually doing well for their career in Nigeria. But once they left the country, you see that it's impossible to get certain kind of job, and of course, they can't be returning back to Nigeria to do the work they used to do. So it's always a big question when someone is creative and just have to live out of the country for whatever reason, it's always like, how do they manage to take care of themselves while still catering to their creativity? Or even if not catering to their creativity, at least take care of themselves without having to resort to certain kind of jobs. And of course, you obviously seem to be doing it well. I had in mind I was going to talk about it, and I like the fact that you've offered some perspective. But I'm also curious now because I'm just imagining someone in Turkey is listening. How does one who doesn't know about this thing, but is considering getting into that kind of business, how does one start? And then do you have any insight on how maybe one can replicate that in other countries that is not Turkey or China? Do you understand my
Okay,
question?
I understand your question perfectly.
Okay.
There is no one way to approach your question. One has to approach it from many different ways and treat them in
Okay.
segments. So let me start from your last question, which is about how does one get into it and all of that. See, um, I think every Igbo man would understand that the secret to business is uh, your contacts.
True.
When it comes to business of this kind, it has to do with your contacts. When you have people who know that you could do something like this. Actually, when I got to Turkey, I didn't. When I got to Turkey, I had a cousin, a distant cousin in Istanbul. He was into the business, like he still is in the business, and he's also in the cargo
Okay.
business as well. He's also in the cargo business as well. So, whenever people want to move their goods from Turkey to Nigeria, he handles that for them. He works with a cargo company owned by Nigerians as well. But there are Nigerians who own
Okay.
cargo companies in Turkey. Yeah, yeah. Nigerians actually own cargo companies in Istanbul. So it makes it easy to buy goods and move down to Nigeria. And it gets to Lagos, and from Lagos you could come and pick it, or pay for let me say some other arrangement to have it delivered to your location.
Yeah.
So when I came to Turkey, he put me through the business. He taught me the ropes of the business.
Okay.
So, and there were people who knew that I was in that I was in Turkey at then. So they were giving me jobs, and I was helping them buy things. It's all about having people who show you ropes. Then you asked the question about how does a creative from Nigeria get to travel out and still maintain people creativity and all that. Okay, it's
Yeah.
it's quite sad that if you look closely at the way things are going, there's a pattern to the fate of Nigerian creatives leaving Nigeria to the
Yeah.
West, to make it. There is a pattern that when they get there, in the area of creativity, like they just fall off.
Yeah.
Ras Kimono is there, Maciek Fashek, LD. I'm sorry, I'm talking about musicians.
If you're talking
L,
about Ras Kimono and Majek, are they Nigerians? I always
of course, Ras Kimono
I
is
always
Nigerian. Maciek,
forget that Majek Fashek. Actually, I don't know about Raskimo. I always forget that Majek Fashek is Nigerian because that name never sounds Nigerian. I just said it and I'm like, oh God, that's true. That man is Nigerian.
I mean,
I
Ras
always
Kimono is Igbo.
forget, but I don't know about Raskimo, to be fair.
Ras Kimono is Igbo, if I'm not mistaken. But
Are you
it's Nigerian.
serious? I never
Yes,
knew where he's
yes.
from. I just knew there's a musician Raskimo. And I don't think I can. I mean, I was much young when he was popping, so I just knew he existed, but I never knew any of his
No, 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 no,
songs, and
no.
I didn't know where he's from.
Yes.
Yeah,
It,
I'm
it, it,
sorry,
it,
but
the pattern is
go
such that
ahead.
the pattern is
Yeah.
such that if you make a name while in Nigeria, at some point you believe that going out there is going to make you better and all of that, in terms of finances and all of that. After a while, you find out that not only are you like doing something that you could consider demeaning for yourself, you find yourself
Yeah,
living, under the poverty line,
yeah,
and you find yourself not having enough time for your creativity again. I mentioned Magic
yeah,
Fashek, I mentioned Ras Kimono. It happened to Dibanj, it happened to LD, it happened to um, uh, Kelly Hanson, who I have great respect for. I have to say that.
yeah,
Um, it happened to a whole lot of them, So, and if you look at it, even some of them who understood this whole thing, for them to make it, I mean, even some of them who were born in the US, or somewhere in the West, they have to come back
yeah,
to Nigeria to create relevance for themselves. Nedosi is one of them. Davido is another.
yeah,
Tenny is another. You understand? So that is how it works. Now, the thing is, this is these are things I always say during whenever I have close discussions with fellow creatives. I always tell them that fame and fortune are not the same thing.
true,
The fact you're popular doesn't mean that you have money.
true.
Like if you see some of these people who are popular and all that, most of them don't have money. Most of them are struggling. Most of them are always broke, or they always have to keep up appearances. So fame and fortune are not the same thing. And
True.
one doesn't always have to rely on their creativity to give them money, because there's a way the creative industry works. In most cases, especially in Nigeria, it is not sustainable.
It is not sustainable.
Yes, the creative industry, even in Nigeria, is like okay. When it comes to writing, the only time we had a The only time we had a sustainable or something close to having a sustainable um, uh, publishing industry was before the Civil War, before the Biafran genocide. Let's call it what it is. Before the Biafran
Yeah.
genocide, that was when we had something that's close to sustainability. Where we had the Onitsha
That's
market.
about 50 years ago, or about 50 years
Exactly.
ago.
Yeah. When we had the Onitsha market literature. I mean, people
Yeah.
were actually making money from actual sales of books. People were making money from actual sales of books. When we had African Writer Series,
After
which
African
was an
Writers
offshoot of
series,
Heine.
yeah.
Yeah, one it was an offshoot of Heinemann. There was James Corey at the head of the whole thing, and then Chino Achebe and Christopher Okibo, right?
Okibo.
Yes, who died during the war. Now, then they were actually paying royalties to Cyprian de Quincy and every other of their writers. I mean,
Yeah.
I was able to spend time with James Corey himself in England, in Oxford, and he told me most of these things, and it's even most of them are even in his book, yeah, which he published. I don't know the year, but the title of the book is Africa Writes Back. Okay,
Okay.
so what I'm trying to say is this: we had a sustainable industry. We had something close to a sustainable literary industry then, but currently, no, because not only is piracy an issue in Nigeria, but some writers never receive royalties for their books. Some Nigerian writers never receive royalties, and some never get they never get any advance payments, and they never get any royalties for their books. But the
And then
books sell, the books are popular.
most publication companies no longer have offices in Nigeria.
Of course, I
I don't
mean,
even think there's any that still have office in Nigeria.
apart from Masobe actually, I don't know if they have, but they have a presence in Nigeria.
They have presence in
I think
Nigeria.
narrative landscape,
Farafina,
Abibiman. I don't know, but I know that they might not have offices. Some might not have offices, but they have presence in Nigeria. However, it is not easy for them, the publishers as well. So the whole thing is
yeah.
quite jumbled. The whole thing is not really now. If you look at the music industry at the same time, you understand as well that it is not even sustainable. Money comes from the underworld to sustain the music industry in Nigeria.
True,
Yes.
fair enough. It's an open
By
secret if you're being honest,
by
yeah.
underworld I mean fraud and everything that drugs
Yeah.
and everything. Yeah. It is nothing new, it's nothing to be ashamed of because it's the same thing as in the United States. It is the same thing as everywhere. There are projects you don't do with taxpayers' money. There are projects you don't do with money that you work like you grind for. There are things you do with I don't know if I should call it free money. Yes.
But I see what you mean, yes.
And the creative industry is one of such things. I just have to be honest with you. If it doesn't
Because
come from grants from
it's a high risk industry.
exactly, exactly, and it's something that there are people who actually pump in money into it without any expectations of profits because they understand
Yeah.
the value. They understand the value it gives to the any people at all.
Yeah.
It's just like media. When you're trying to make money from media, I mean, you really must be somebody. The person has to be crazy. The person has to be crazy to think that he could make money from media. So that's. I mean, there's a way the world works. Let's just put it this way: there's a way the world
Yeah.
functions. So everybody owes it to themselves to understand
To
how the
find their
world
own way.
functions, so that they can, they can adjust their expectations in such a way that they wouldn't have to suffer through life. They won't have to make some certain mistakes that are avoidable. So
Yeah, me.
what I'm trying to say is that the creative is, I mean, the creative thinking that you could go to the West and I mean, whenever you put those choices on your table, you have to know that you go out, you forgo one for the other.
Sure.
Yeah, you just have to tell yourself that.
It's it's a very interesting point you've raised because, like you said, it's a very high risk industry, and I don't want to say low reward, but sometimes it feels like it because I mean people have become rich from these industries, but also it's like it's a bit of a gamble. And
Yeah.
from someone create content. I used to have a blog at the time we met. I know there are posts you write on your blog. You think this is the one everybody is going to like because you so much loved. You've done a lot of research. You've done everything. You think this is the best thing you've written so far, and then nobody seems to care about it. And then you write something on that. Will I say do rest? Like you need to publish because you have schedule, you have a timeline, and you have just 30 minutes to come up with something, and everybody's so excited about it. And I think this is just, I'm talking, giving an example to the blog, but that's the same thing with music, the same thing with films, the same thing with, I think it was Uche Jumbo that made a tweet sometime. It was like she's been in the industry for 20 years, but sometimes she still doesn't know what works because she has done films that she also thought was just going to be, well, I'm doing it, and everybody likes it. And then she does the one she thinks is the best, and nobody is even giving it not concerned about it, that kind of
It
thing. It
happens.
works in music, it works at books, it works with fashion. Almost every creative industry has seen those kind of patterns happening where you think this is the best, but the audience don't care about it. So it's like there's no way to measure it at the end of the day. I mean,
Yes.
people who write criticism or reviews would always have benchmarks and they always have the good work and the bad. But the good, if something can be critically reviewed, get positive reviews, but then the audience still don't care. And some can get all the bad reviews from all the best of reviewers, and the audience are still having fun with it. So it's like it's a bit of a gamble at the end of the day, and you're pouring in money into this, like you said. You don't know if it's going to come out or not. And it's important for me to ask this question because I was having a conversation with one of my friends. I'm trying to get into filmmaking. I don't think I've said it on this podcast before, but I know I mentioned it on my newsletter. So I'm trying to get into filmmaking. I actually have a film that I just completed work on. And I remember I was discussing with a friend. It's like I have to do 9 to 5 because there's no other way. If I don't do 9 to 5, I'll be on the streets, and that's just the reality of the thing. It's there's no way. I mean, thankfully, filmmaking is not something you have to do every day, but which is why I'm able to still juggle and manage it. But at the end of the day, if I'm making a film that is directed to a primarily Nigerian audience, I think something has to give. I mean, I have to be going back to Nigeria every time and again, which is not going to be sustainable for my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm having this conversation, I still don't think I have the answers. And what I told my friend when we were having this conversation is like, when look at it, there's no one who I think I've seen that has done something I can look forward to, like watch and say, this is the person's whose footstep I'm following because nobody seems to have done it. It's either for the film, for the writers, they go and take teaching jobs in Europe or in America, but it's still a job because that's the only
Yeah, it
option.
is. It is.
And for the filmmakers, is they will have a years of hiatus. I mean, Sora Sobole came back to Nigeria recently. Joseph Benjamin came back to Nigeria recently, or he's trying to come back to Nigeria. So it's like you just have to forgo your craft for a couple number of years, and then you come back to it. You mentioned last kimono. I really don't know their story, but imagine that something must have given either their creativity or something. And it's sad when you look at it because ideally the ideal situation would have been to be in Nigeria and do whatever you want to do, still feel safe, still make ends meet, and then still do your creativity. Now this became a rant, and that was not the plan.
No, 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 no. I think let me offer let me attempt to
Yeah.
offer something by way of an answer. Let me attempt to offer something by way of an answer.
Okay.
The thing is, there's something I have come to understand. I've paid close attention to, and I think I'm coming to understand that the way out of this, in most cases,
Hmm.
should be paying close attention and seeking out people like, okay, let me put it this way. There are people in this world who have money, or rather, they have
Okay.
agenda and they have the money to fund it.
Okay.
There are people who have agenda. There are powerful, silent people in this world who have agenda and they have the money to fund it.
Okay.
If you can shape your work in such a way that it suits or it serves their agenda, they will give you all the funding you need.
Yeah, but then it's. I mean, I understand that economically it makes sense, but doesn't that go against what creativity stands for to an extent? Because it kind of shapes the creative work itself. I don't know if that makes sense.
True. It makes sense.
Because I mean, who pays the piper dictates the tune. So it's like
True.
if I'm going to be dancing to the tune of whoever this agenda having person is, it's like they have to call the shots. And if they call the shots, it means I have to keep on bending myself forward, backwards, or to whatever the tone of the music is.
You are right. You are very
Okay.
correct. And this is no, it is no fault of the creative that is the reality of the world because I mean
True.
there are this is the world. I mean this is how it is, and it should be on the conscience of every good person who has money to
Yeah.
stand by and not use their money to balance society. So
Okay.
the thing is when you look at this world, there are good people who actually have money, right?
Yeah.
But they will never serve any communal good as in with it. They believe like they use the money for something else. But there are people who are crazy enough to to bend the world to suit their agenda, and they have the money to
Yeah.
fund it, and they are ready to fund it, and that is why the world is shaped the way it is. It is not my fault. It is not your fault. It is the world.
I mean, I think it's actually a very practical approach to this whole thing. And if anybody does it, I don't think they are to blame. Because, like you said, it's practical. It's you're just doing what you have to do to get by. Because at the end of the day, if you decide to stick to your guns and be that creative person that is unbending, you might go hungry. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is, your fan, people who support your work would support you, but they wouldn't care so much at the end of the day because time would come, they will no longer see your work, and it's like you become someone who used to create, and that's the much they can do for you. To talk about your work randomly, but that's the much they can do for you, and then you are no longer creating, you're no longer making money, and it's like it's a very interesting world we live in.
Let me put something into perspective.
Yeah,
Have you ever compared the lots between Igbo writers and
yeah.
Northern writers?
No, I don't think I've ever bothered so
Okay,
much.
if you sit back or if you hang around their communities in Abuja and in Niger and other places, you find out that
Yeah,
most of the writers of Northern extracts, they have money. They could sometimes they could have like 5 million in their account. They have money. This is
yeah,
because there are powerful people in the north who fund them. Look at Kaduna Book Festival.
yeah,
Erufai is a major donor.
yeah.
Erufai supports the art, and there are other people like him. I respect that.
And his, wi-
That is
his wife is a writer too, isn't she?
well, I don't know about her, but I know she's very much interested in the whole literary community. But
The literature, yes.
that family invests so much in the arts, and that is what I respect, and that is what I mean. If you come down to the east amongst Igbo people, I don't think I know of anybody apart from
That has such
Guy,
investment.
Gaius Chibueze, who, as at last year, funded the Umofia Literary Festival. I don't know if he's funded that of this year. I don't know. But as for last year, he funded it,
Yeah,
which was the first of its kind, and it's like a similar thing to the Kaduna Book Festival. So, and Kaduna Book Festival is fast becoming, a global platform
yeah.
because the funding is there. I mean, you can dream as much as you want to. The funding is there for you. This is somebody. So now you could argue that after all, Rufai is a politician, and we know that politicians steal money. Fine. What are our people doing with theirs?
And I don't even
With their own
agree with
student
his
funds,
politics, but yes.
right? So why? So I might not. El-Rufai, I might not agree with El-Rufai on a whole lot. In fact, on a whole lot of on so many levels. I have
Yeah,
my criticism of the man, right?
yeah.
But I respect the fact that he supports the arts.
Okay.
And there is something about me, right? I have a weakness for anybody who supports arts and creativity
Yeah,
because I mean, it has been the way of the world that sometimes some people could be dictators, they could be bad and this and that, but they're able to sustain the art. Like, for instance, the Medici family in Florence, Italy. They were the
Yeah,
ones who it is because of them that we love Michelangelo. It because they funded the art and all. I mean, art has always been in fact, there's always been an industry that has never been sustainable all through the years, all through the ages.
it's always needed funding.
Y-
Yeah,
Yes, it has always been wealthy family that made their money from wherever source they made it from. But for some reason, in the midst of their madness, they had a you know in art. Sorry, they have something for
an
arts.
interest.
Yeah, they have exactly. So they end up they end up doing something, and there is this thing about arts. My understanding of arts
Yeah,
is what it does for generations to come, not for the present generation.
okay. Yeah,
Because
fair, it's
it
true.
yeah, it makes generations to come sit back and say this is the contribution of my people to the advancement of the human race. It gives in them that sense of pride that they are welcome to the table, that they have a place in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But
And
and
most
yeah,
importantly, it's always a documentation of how things used to be.
yes, and for the fact you have been able to document how things used to be, that means you once were. This is where you like. If somebody should come up and tell you that Africans have like they've contributed nothing to the world, all they do is eat, dance, multiply, have sex,
Yeah,
they could they could prove it if they can go back, let me say back then, and say, okay, this is where Europe was, this is what we did, this is what we achieved, this is what we did, this is what we did. As of this year, where were your people?
yeah,
So it already gives you that sense of inferiority where there is no proof, where there's no structural evidence as to point out as to what your ancestors were doing when these people were doing this same thing. And that is why that's why they regard it as an act of genocide. When a people goes to decimate proofs or rather cultural how do I put it? Uh,
evidences.
cultural artifacts.
Okay, artifacts. Yeah.
When people go to destroy these things, it is always termed an act of genocide. It is as good as going to wipe out a particular people,
And I mean, I think
right?
historically also when there is a war, art gets destroyed or gets stolen or gets. And at first, I didn't used to think about it. But of course, obviously, over time, you begin to understand that it's a pattern and it's an intentional thing because
Yes,
it's a way to say we are bigger than you, and it's a way to
yes.
say let's remove this exist part of your existence and then wipe it up and
It,
make it go
mm,
extinct or
no,
non-existent.
practically what it is that they are trying to change the social order. They're trying to make you understand that
Yeah,
from now to far into the foreseeable future, let my people be always higher than your people. That is how they
exactly.
go to destroy, like that is why they go to destroy every structural evidence, as in to point to the fact that you once had some contribution to the overall advancement of the human race.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting perspective. And also, I think eventually we've ended up veering off from your experience with talking about art and creativity. And it's been an insightful conversation. And of course, I also understand a lot of people are going to find it helpful because we can tell a lot of Nigerians young are leaving the country, and some of these people are creative people, whether we like it or not. And some people are making it in spite of or trying to find ways. And I think, as much as I really don't completely agree to it, I think I find sense in your suggestion that life is what it is, and we just have to find a way to dance to whoever is bringing the money, or not necessarily dance to them, basically have a way to find those who person bringing the money and get the money from them, however you're going to do it. And I think it's a very practical perspective. And as much as I may have to still find a way to lean into that. I just think it's practical because it is reality. We didn't make the world the way it is. We found it the way. And sometimes we, as much as we want to say we want to make the world a better place, and the much we can do is a dance. That's the much each of us can do individually, even when we come as a group. the most we can do is a dent because there are nearly 8 billion people on Earth. And yeah, but before we round up, I want you to talk a little bit about some of your work recently. And I think you mentioned you're in Mexico. What's happening in Mexico and why is it important for you for your career as a writer?
Okay. I'm here in Mexico on the invitation of Africa Cultural Center in Mexico, in Puebla, Mexico. And I'm the writer in residence, and being a writer in residence means that I have to be at the fore of, like, I have to be at the fore of, decision making when it concerns, promoting this whole setup, you know, diplomatically, culturally, and all that. I mean, we hosted the we've hosted some diplomats from some embassies, some diplomatic missions here in Mexico, and we are in good terms with a good number of them, even from the Italian embassy, the Turkish embassy, and So yes, the thing
Yeah.
is, and there are a lot of things I'm supposed to do here, and one of them is to organize the Puebla International Film Festival. Sorry, literary festival, Puebla International Literary Festival, which is to hold in October.
Okay.
It has not officially been put out, but we're still sending invitations to writers, and we'll be bringing the big names here from all over, from the US, even from Nigeria, from the UK, and elsewhere. Yeah. So so that is it. And about my works, I have okay, I published Deportee, which is available on Amazon,
Okay.
Blackwell's, practically everywhere. I released Rose of the East. I have copies of them here. I have a copy here if I don't know. Okay. So it's available everywhere as well. Then I'm releasing a book in next by next month. It's titled Whatever Happens in Antalya. That is more or less my tribute to Turkey because I live in Antalya. It's a part of Turkey, a
Yeah.
touristy part of Turkey. And that place is more or less like a paradise. I mean, the place is such that, according to history, one of the ancient Greek emperors sent his servants to go and seek out the paradise that were talked about that exists on earth. So
Okay.
they came to Antalya, they saw it, and they went back to him and told him that we have found the paradise. That come and see it. So he came there, he laid claim over the place, and the place was actually like it had so much importance, in the ancient world that
Yeah.
Cleopatra came all the way from Egypt
To see
to,
it.
to see the place for herself. And there's a place,
Interesting.
even up to today, called Cleopatra's Pool in Antalya. Even till date, it's just
Okay.
thermal springs, and it's beautiful. In fact, it's something else. So Antalya inspired me so much, and it attracts a lot of tourists from all over the world. So I wrote a book that is set there. Is a romance slash erotica novel slash adventure. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's about a Nigerian tourist who gets tied up in a romantic relationship with an older French tourist. Yeah, the
Okay.
adventures and everything. So it comes out next month, and it will be available at Roving Heights in Nigeria and Lagos as well too, even in Kenya, Noria Books in Kenya. So yeah, while being writer in residence here, I'm still working on a Turkish crime novel series. I'm working on the book two. I'm done with the book one. So
Interesting. So basically writing is doing multiple things at the same time and still share publishing books because that's exactly what you're doing.
well, I'm not my own publisher anyway. So I'm mostly published by Abiban Publishing. So
No, I mean,
um
but still, when I say publishing, I mean you doing the actual writing because
okay.
you, from what you said, like you have two books in the work and then you also have your residency. So that's like doing a lot of things at the same time.
Oh yes, yes. I've been able to go through life and still stick to my creativity. I mean, still make it a focal point of everything that I do. Of course, sometimes it means I have to make choice. It means I have to make choices, But then I mean, I always make choices as well. So it's life.
All right, fair enough. And you recently got married.
Yes.
And I have to ask this question because we already know the conversation about how men, especially, struggle to find romance when they move to the Western world. So I'm just going to ask, first of all, did you meet your partner before your sojourn to Cyprus, or was it in this whole process that the relationship started?
I met my wife on Facebook. Yes.
Okay, but
I met
yes, but okay, go ahead.
I met on Facebook. I was in Turkey. She is still in Nigeria. So
Okay,
I had to come back to get married to her. And then, so what I usually do is I spend the arrangements is that, due to the fact that I travel a lot, so
yeah,
I have no base. Even though I have a residence in Turkey, but
yeah,
I hardly stay up to 6 months in Turkey. I hardly stay up to 6 months because I'm either in France promoting my book, or I'm in Poland or elsewhere. Just I'm always traveling, and I'm
yeah.
supposed to be in Mexico for 6 months, and after which, I mean, in fact my schedule for I have some um invitations coming up. Even from
Okay.
between now till December. So I cannot guarantee where I will be at after October. So
Whoa, okay, that's a very
that is
interesting schedule to have. And I imagine, how does that work out for your relationship?
Well, it has its own strain on my relationship, but my wife understands very much that my my creativity, my drive for success takes number one position in my life.
Are you sure
Yes,
about
sure.
that? Are you sure it's something you have to say out loud?
No, no, this is this
Okay,
every woman I've had any relationship with, this is something I let them
yeah,
understand from the onset. So that is why I've always
okay,
known that I cannot have a regular relationship as everybody expects. Because
okay.
if I try to have a regular relationship like everybody does, I will end up like every other writer who I know, or every other creative who I know, who got to fall off after getting married.
Wow, that is deep, and I don't think we want to go into all of that, but I understand. I mean, also, I think with every human relationship, you have to find what works for you, and so long as the arrangement you have is suitable for you and your partner, I think it's none about any other person's business. And I think that basically is going to conclude our episode. But I'm going to ask you, based on your experience, obviously we know we're not telling anybody to go to Cyprus, but based on your experience, if someone is trying to get to Europe, to Turkey, for instance, to leave for school or for whatever reason, what would you advise that they have in mind?
Okay. Well, it's always difficult advising people because everybody have their own realities. My reality, I don't think will ever be the same with some other persons. Okay. I mean, for some people, they are better off going to the West to study and start off their life because one thing about Turkey
Yeah,
is this: Turkey can never give you Turkey can never give you a permanent residence. They always give you temporary residence. So at most 2 years, you renew after 2 years. And if you like stay for 10 years, I mean to the best of my knowledge, they won't give you a permanent residence. Now, if I had spent the number of years I spent in Turkey in some other part of Europe or even in Mexico, I would have had a Mexican passport already.
okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
fast.
yes, and having a foreign passport is always a plus. I mean, for any Nigerian, I have to say
Sure.
that. So, I mean, if you find yourself in Turkey and maybe if you're a business mind, fine, it will work for you. I mean, Obi Kubana, they were all there at some point. E-money was there at some point. I mean, some of the Nigerian big boys were there at some point, because as in that's how they got their contacts in buying goods, importation and all of that.
Yeah.
So that is so what I'm trying to say is this: everybody's reality is different. I mean, I was in the UK. I spent 3 months in the UK once in 2022. That was the longest I stayed in the UK. And I mean, for some people, I mean, I know Nigerians were flocking to the UK, then they wanted to be in the UK, but I just didn't want to be in the UK because I felt that no, it was not uh, like I didn't feel welcome in the UK. Even though I had everything
Okay.
to make me feel comfortable there because I was there as I did a lot of things there because that was when I was newly integrated into the James Corey Society, and I was a volunteer for the Oxford Drive Festival, and I did all of that. I did all of the whole creative
Yeah.
stuff and all that. I was very busy. I had it. They gave me a life that was soft. Okay, still I knew that I was never supposed to be in the UK. I was never supposed to live in the UK. So
Interesting.
everybody was going to the UK, but the UK was never for me. Everybody's going to Canada, but I know Canada is not for me. I know it's not for me. So it's my own reality. I cannot impose that on anybody. I know what I want. I know
Yeah.
what I'm working towards. Yeah, so I can't. I mean, this is no it's no model for anybody, but this is just me. I'm just sharing my reality with the
No,
audience.
I mean, I totally understand it. And I think it's also basically in line with how you like to look at things very honestly. And I think it makes sense because everybody wouldn't cope in Europe. Everybody wouldn't cope in the United. I don't think I can live in the United States because it's like the hustle culture is a little too much for me. I don't think I have it in me. So I think at the end of the day, everybody will have to realize that every place wouldn't work for you because we have different expectations from life and stuff like that. But thank you once again for coming to the podcast and sharing your perspective and just providing new insight because at least I have something I can think about. And I hope that maybe someone who listens finds also new perspective to their thoughts about living abroad or maybe managing a career in the creative field while navigating life abroad. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for having me here. Thank you.
All right. So if you also listen to this part of the podcast, I mean, thank you for sticking through. I really appreciate you, and I hope you come back for next episodes. And remember to follow, subscribe, rate the podcast, and share with your friends. Is there something else I'm missing now? All right. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.